Hi, Ron.
Hello, Trey.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for sitting and talking with me. And you're such an interesting person from everywhere else in the state. So with your background, you have worked in all sorts of things in all parts of the community.
That is absolutely true.
Because of our strong tourism, and I really think it's two pieces. There's casino entertainment, Las Vegas, and then there's all the natural beauty in the Great Basin Park. And you've worked in a variety of different communities. Is that something that is a concern as far as your economic security? Are you concerned about your ability to work?
Oh, sure. Well, and that's one of the reasons that I'm in Las Vegas, is that it became extremely hard to make a living in Carson City. I've worked in several capacities. I worked as a bartender in a little sports bar in Gardnerville, which is semi-tourism in the sense that in the winter you get a lot of ski bums who come through. In the summer we have Burning Man, and there's a huge caravan of folks who come through. I did work at South Lake Tahoe, about 100 yards inside California, across from Heavenly. That was my last job up there, and that was absolutely tourism driven. Slow ski season means slow economic issues. Yeah, you're just not making the money. But I also was a gunfighter in Virginia City, and that is a town that absolutely survives on tourism. There's nothing else there as far as industry, short of there's some of the basics, but the population absolutely has to have tourism to exist the way that it does. And tourism is something in Nevada. It's contentious because you want tourism. However, as Lake Tahoe has become a much more desirable destination, if you live in the area, the places you used to like to go, the places you used to go to visit, are almost inaccessible because of the number of other people that are there now.
Okay.
So you lose out on that. And so that's a hard sell for locals when you say, hey, we'd really like to make this a tourist attraction. Well, we'd love to have the money, but we'll lose this beautiful thing. We'll never get to enjoy it the way that we do now. So there definitely has to be a balance struck in that.
Of the few things the Lieutenant Governor does, chairing the Commission on Tourism is one of them. I want to do what you just said, which is we want the tourism, but we also want to preserve the beauty, make it worth doing. So what, as far as like expanding tourism in not Las Vegas, we'll just say to our natural resources, do you think that there should be more attention to expand tourism just for the sake of volume and to ensure jobs, et cetera?
That is honestly something that should be talked to with the locals. That is a local sort of issue. A good example would be the Cowboy Poetry Festival. That could be huge. And I'm sure that the communities that support that would love to have the tourism that affects it, but they also don't want to lose their rural flavor. Yeah. So there has to be some way to strike a balance with that. I would not presume, not living in those communities, to tell them what they need for tourism.
Right.
When you look at Las Vegas, the airport guys are all getting money because all the seats are full and they're making big money. This is booming numbers. So Vegas doesn't need anything.
Right.
The other parts of the state, I would ask them. I would go to those places, go to those festivals and those small towns and say, what would you like? Do you want us to bring more people here? And I think you'll see a lot of pushback. A lot of people will definitely say, no, we're okay. You'll have others who are opportunistic and will definitely want that. But I think that's the kind of thing that should be done at the local level and get their opinion on it.
And that's something that I want to offer the people of Nevada is I'm not approaching this campaign with, here's my ideas, because of everything we talked about with regard to the Nevada's communities that aren't Las Vegas. There are nuances to small communities with their EMS, police, fire. So when we talk about social issues, mental health, access to primary care, we have to have a different conversation. And instead of someone in a cube in Carson City deciding what's good for Las Vegas as far as, a public health initiative or tourism, or doing that for Elko, Lander, Esmeralda. I think that prescriptive government is a bad idea. What's the best way to engage rural communities to have conversations about develop economy, increase tourism, but modulate it?
Those places have town halls. They have barbecues. They have county fairs. They have traditional rural events. The Republicans just had their big shindig in Minden, and it's a bass fry. And if you've never been, it is a ranch where everybody gets together and there's drinking beer and they're wearing cowboy hats and they're yucking it up. And it's as stereotypical rural Nevada as you can get. And you get into every other community and it's very much like that. If you go to Battle Mountain, which is halfway to everywhere, and honestly, it's the middle of nowhere. When you get out there, it is the middle of nowhere, but it's beautiful. And when you meet the people and you talk to them, I have a friend that has a hog ranch out there, which is outside of Battle Mountain. So it's farther out in the middle of nowhere than even the middle of nowhere. And their livelihood is heavily dependent on the mining. So that's a whole new subject we didn't even cover that they have to discuss.
So from your perspective, what are your expectations from candidates? What are you looking for when you're deciding who to vote for?
As a registered independent voter, I look at candidates not by their party affiliation. And I think that there are a lot of Nevadans who do the same thing. They're looking for candidates that offer them something that is what they're looking for. Everybody's got a different expectation. But like in my case, I tend to vote specifically on firearms. That's my big issue for choosing a candidate. But I'm not looking at party affiliation. I use that sort of as a bellwether to figure out where I think they're going to be. But when you have independent candidates, there's always been kind of an expectation that they can't possibly win, so you have to vote for one of the major party candidates. Mm-hmm. And as you were explaining, you have a viability that you don't have to get everybody from each party to come on over. There's a large swath of people right in the middle who have varying opinions. They don't fall into full red Republican idealism or full blue Democrat idealism. They've got mixed values. There are so many societal issues with government and how we expect government to perform for us, things that we expect them to do, and things that we expect them to leave us alone on, that nobody meets the standard on either side. If you vote straight party either way, you're just condemning yourself to more of the same issue. You've got this pendulum that swings back and forth, and one side takes control and they run things the way they want to for a while, and then everybody gets fed up with it, so they swing hard the other direction, and there's this cry that everything's, oh, now these guys are going to ruin it. And they do the same thing. They run it the same way for their term as long as they can hold on to that power, and then it swings back the other way. And I really think that people, especially in the rural areas, are tired of that. You get sick of constantly going back and forth, and for not getting what you expect out of your vote. As somebody who I desperately wanted to be a Republican, and the Republicans did everything they could to alienate me. They've done everything they possibly can. They will get hung up on issues that matter absolutely none to me. I don't care about gay marriage. Like, I have gay friends and I expect them to be treated like everybody else. And then you have this whole party they make that an essential part of their plank, that becomes what they're focused on, and they can't balance the budget. They can't fund the schools properly. There's this concern with this issue that so many people don't care about, and they have made it this stance. And Then you get over to the other side and they've got this issue that they're hung up on and they can't balance the budget and so you get fed up with it. Well, why should I vote for any of them? Well, I'm not getting anything out of it. I'm getting more of the same. So having a candidate that offers a different perspective, something new, and potentially teaches these guys that they need to come into line, that they need to, instead of focusing on their own petty, egotistic issues, listen to what the Nevadans need, what they're looking for, what they want.
When my right to vote was restored and I registered to vote, I really had to put that box aside for a couple days to think about where I was and where I have been and the work I do. So in advocating at the legislature, there were allies on both sides, and we would get Republicans to support things that would help addiction recovery and mental health. And then they won't run because they aren't supported by the party because they're not right enough. And the D's, same thing. So this moderate piece is this loyalty test. What I'm presenting to Nevadans, and I think this aligns with my personal philosophy, and that's where I'm very comfortable with it. As a nonpartisan candidate, what I don't have is I do not have the resources of the machinery. So I'm not competing for the millions and millions that the Democrats have and the other side has. But I also don't have to bend to the partisan agendas. I don't have to represent that. And what I am endeavoring to do with the lieutenant governor position is, of the constitutional officers, it's the least consequential, and I think that's fair to say. Its role, the role is limited. And you don't run a major agency and like Secretary of State, you're not in charge of elections, AG, all that stuff. And your daily life can be severely impacted by who the governor is, who the AG is, who the sheriff is, and all that stuff. But the lieutenant governor is kind of this person in waiting. But the thing I want to present to Nevadans is I am disappointed and disconnected from the parties. I don't see in any party someone I really support. And it's nuanced. So the other part of this is I'm not alone.
Absolutely not.
Nonpartisan on paper is outpacing both party registrations. And then the other piece of data that is discounted, and certainly was discounted with redistricting, was the rate of defection. How many Democrats cross-party vote and vice versa. And one thing that is frustrating the industry of politics, the political industry, and the consultants that are well paid, is they cannot nail down the middle. And I think that's awesome, because Nevada has never been a red-blue state. It's always been independent. I mean, when we talk about anything that, well, this is how they do it in California, it's dead. Because whatever they're doing in California, the Democrats don't even, we're not going for there because we're not, whatever it is expensive. So the challenge is, people talk about third parties. Well, what we need is a third party. And there's a movement for a third party, and they are selling themselves as well-funded, and they're gearing up for the next election. So many people only focus on the presidential election. In Nevada, our governor will always be decided in the midterm. The constitutional officers will always be in the midterms. So this is the opportunity for Nevadans to make a statement. Electing a nonpartisan to a statewide office, what do you think that would do to the parties?
Oh, it would send a clear message. It would tell them that they're vulnerable to the folks who have expectations of them. People are tired, voters are tired of feeling as if you have to vote for someone because you despise the other candidate.
Right.
Most of us as people want to feel connected. We want to feel like, oh, well, this is somebody I would vote for. Not, I'm voting for this guy because I despise this guy. And that's how we've had the past several presidential candidacies have been run. We're not voting for a character, we're voting for the opposite of the last guy. You've got a hotly contested governor's race that neither one of their candidates are particularly popular with either bunch.
Right.
And they're despised by the opposite side. And there's no real happy medium, I really want to vote for this guy because I like him. it would be great to have a candidate who, especially in an office like lieutenant governor, which is safe. You don't, voting for a nonpartisan candidate for lieutenant governor doesn't affect my life in any way. So if I've made the wrong choice, well, the worst thing you can do is, I don't know, wear the wrong tie.
Thinking that way, the viability question is the big one. You know, because we've been...
Can you do it? Can you get elected as a nonpartisan?
Exactly. You know, that is a major issue because a lot of people say you have to pick the one you hate. You know, Joe Biden, Trump. No one, I mean, yes, people voted for Joe Biden, but not because they liked him. They were voting against Donald Trump.
Yep.
They're desperately trying to get you to fall into this binary view. There's either this or that. I'm trying to present what I see, not only personally, is I don't identify with these parties. I don't see myself in either party. You got, when I talked about lieutenant governor, that it's a statewide office that's just not going, it's a largely ceremonial.
Minimal in scope.
Yes, but the magic of it is it's statewide. You know, the mandate, if I was elected as a nonpartisan, the mandate from the people is, hello, parties, we have at least picked one. And I hope that's the start of a whole new way of thinking.
Sure, and it's a great opportunity for voters to have an option that isn't connected to the party, that is a spoiler for both sides. It pokes the thumb in the eye of both parties and says, look, you don't own our votes. Just because we fit a specific demographic, because we're rural, we're urban, whatever our demographic, you don't own our votes. If somebody comes along who's got a better opportunity, a better idea, actually offers us something to hope for, then we're going to vote for them. And the parties have had such a lock on it for so long, and they play the hatred and fear of the other party against you to the point where you feel, if I don't vote for this particular issue that's important to me, that these guys say that they're going to deal with, then I'm going to lose the thing that I hold dear. I'm going to lose my issue. So I have to vote for this party. If we can step away from that, and we have other candidates who come in and say, look, I'm concerned about these things. I respect the Constitution. I respect the people of Nevada. I respect your wishes. I'm looking to do these important things without all of this sideshow stuff, all of the unnecessary issues that get thrown in there that most people don't care about. You know, I've watched the progression of like marijuana legalization in the state from where it used to be a felony to now people smoke it on the street, on the strip on vacation without fear, which to me is a huge leap forward in that it takes away from a lot of civil liberty potential abuses, because it's always been used by law enforcement as a way to get into a car or a way to bring in a suspect without having any actual probable cause. Well, I smell weed, you're coming to jail. Right. And it has opened, like we don't have to worry about that being a crime now. Police can focus on a bigger issue. So you take that out of the equation, and it's no longer an issue that either side gets to fight over. And that, I would love to see that happen with more issues. There are plenty of little things that we don't care about, that the average voter doesn't care about a lot of these things that the big parties get hung up on. You have fringes on both sides that are very adamant about what they want, but you have a huge swath in the middle who don't care about those specific things. And especially you have, in the rural areas, you have people that don't care anything about what happens in Clark County. So they would like to see Clark County dealt with on their own. And the folks in Clark County don't care about what happens in the rural areas, so they don't care what happens out there. So making that a centerpiece to a statewide issue, someone in a statewide office needs to be able to look at the whole picture and realize that there are many moving parts to it and offer something for everybody. And that, I think, is what can win a race like that. Having somebody who looks at the whole thing, gets what is going on throughout the entire state, and offers to do what needs to be done without all of the ceremony and unnecessary trappings that come with party affiliation. When you have a candidate who comes from a specific area, say for instance, Clark County, and their whole campaign has been funded by casinos, then when casinos come forward with a bill, we just assume, well, you're in their pocket. You're beholden to this investor. You're beholden to these investor. I
See?
That's
But
that's probably the correct word. Donor, but you don't, as a little guy, especially as an average voter, you don't feel like you have a voice. Like this vote, this is it. This is your one time to say something. If you've been to testify at the legislature, you know that you're wasting your breath because they've already met with the lobbyists. They've already been told what they're going to vote. It feels like a procedural thing. So having somebody there who's not in the party gives you the opportunity to feel like, oh, you know what, maybe there's a voice for me. Right. And I think a lot of people in the middle would love to have a voice. And that's what having an independent candidate, especially in a statewide office, somebody who can muck things up for the guys on both sides, that's what an independent candidate offers us.
I completely agree with that. And having been at the legislature as a tiny lobbyist, I called it the stand and wink. These mega lobbyists would walk in the room, not even sit down, make eye contact, gestures occurred, and they walk out of the room. And then it was over. Where I always could best them is better research, better information, because they don't need it. When parties have big money and they have funded campaigns, and this is disruptive to the politics industry. There is a ton of money made by people who run campaigns and consult and stuff like that. None of it is focused on the people. It is focused on power. That's the thing that I want desperately to communicate to the people. You have always had the power with your popular sovereignty and vote to demand and insist that people represent you. We have been so well trained over decades and decades that there are only two choices. And what's happened now is the gridlock is so tight with, the Democrats control the US Senate because of the vice president. That's technical and it's a push. So they benefit from squashing any independent, nonpartisan voice that comes out of anywhere or any third party or whatever. But the consequence of losing, they still get paid, but it should, I believe it will defibrillate the lock. And Nevada is the right kind of state to do it because Nevada is strong and independent and they want small government that provides basic resources. I've said this before. I don't think the government should be on the front page every day. It should be in the background and kick in when shit happens. So the key here is how to present viability. I think a lot of people will check the box just because they're contrarian. They're like, I'm not interested in
a protest.
And at least it's better than none of the above. Because that is a completely wasted vote. None of the above is a statement, but no one listens to it. If none of the above wins, it doesn't matter. We're a plurality state. That's the other path to viability. The winner doesn't have to get 51%. And based on the primaries, based on the primaries and based on registration, if everyone voted their registration, a nonpartisan would win. But they're not because people are trained to vote this or that. But what you're talking about too is historical groups that have been presumed Democrat, like Black people, are really taking a new look at this because it's kind of like, why am I a Democrat? Well, because my dad was a Democrat, and et cetera, et cetera. Where did this come from? Younger people are being more critical about this. So that is exciting to me because I love this country, I love this state, and I take responsibility, and every citizen is responsible. If you have the right to vote, that is what self-government is. If the self-government people want a dictatorship or they want a theocracy, all political theory says go for it. But as long as there's a legitimate way for people to participate, free elections, free speech, due process, any one of those goes where the republic is unraveling. And elections are having a straight-on assault by the right, and due process is in jeopardy, mentioning that we're just going to do it and let due process kick in later. That's not what we want. A benefit of divided government, and a lot of people are like, well, divided government is inefficient. It is as it was designed. We have a federalist system. Power is divided up into branches, into states. And one thing I see happening is actually the role of the state is increasing, because there's been kind of like, we wait for the feds to come in. Now, with recent Supreme Court rulings, states are picking up the pieces on civil rights.
As it should have been.
As it always should have been, right? So that's the challenge, I think. The only thing I have is for people to tell other people. And one of the things that's coming up is and I encountered this when I was doing the petition drive, is a lot of people just didn't want to be on record making a political statement.
Sure.
And that was a learning experience, because it was like, you're kidding me, right? Okay. I mean, you're a good friend, and we've known each other for a long time. So running for office, I assume you would support me if I was a Democrat or Republican. But maybe not, or maybe not to my face or whatever. But what could I?
I definitely would tell you to your face.
I believe you would. I mean, as most of my friends would.
Well, and they should, because the last thing you want is to be surrounded by sycophants who are just going to tell you what you want to hear, and you may as well be in one party or the other.
Yeah.
If you're gonna, if that's how you're going to run things, I think that in your case, one of the things that made me like you as a person, made me be friends with you. You know, we were employees together, the same job, but you know, I have plenty of friends that I made there that I'm not really close to. In your case, one of the things that really struck me was that you were somebody who was involved in politics. You had a political opinion, but you were a Nevadan. You were somebody who, when I came from the Carson Valley and I moved to Las Vegas the first time and I met you, I was very jaded about what it meant to be someone who lived in Las Vegas. Because to my understanding, everyone who lived in Las Vegas was somebody who was self-absorbed, cared only about Clark County, knew nothing about the rest of the state. And while that is a typical Clark County resident, many people don't know anything about the outside. Now that I live here, I understand how you can get caught up in that. When I talked about things from up north, you knew the players, you knew people who were involved, you understood what some of that stuff meant. Well, you're not a Norther, you don't live up north. You get it. You get that the state is more than just this little piece, and that there's a lot of moving parts, that there are more things going on to it. So in your case, I would just say capitalize on the fact that you're a Nevadan, you identify as a Nevadan. Many people don't do that. Many people live here and don't identify as Nevadans. They're here for convenience. They're here because the place they came from is no longer a viable place to live for whatever reason, usually expense. You get it. You are a Nevadan. You're somebody who cares about Nevada. When you and I have had political discussions or economic discussions, whatever, anything we've talked about, it's always been from the perspective of somebody who cares about the state. And that's what I like about you, what I respect about you. I mean, beyond that, you're my friend, but in this context, that's why I support you. That's why I would like to see you succeed. I have friends who have said things to me like, I love that your friend is an independent, but I don't think he can win. Right. Or, isn't he just a Democrat in disguise? I'm like, no, he absolutely is not. And if that were the case, I wouldn't support him. I mean, if I appreciate where you are and what you're looking to do, and I would love to see that happen.
This is a plurality state. The human being who gets the most votes. If I got 32% versus 31 and 30.
That's all it takes.
That's all it takes. So it doesn't have to knock it out of the park. A lot of people who are worried about, and here's the other thing about people who might be worried about losing their vote. You get to vote for your governor and everyone else. There's 10 people you're voting for that are in elected office. You're just picking one that says, we want someone different. That statement has been the statement throughout our history that has changed the course of events. That has been, people have to step up. No one gives you civil rights. You have to claim them and exercise them. And then you got to be willing to go to jail, and due process will kick in, and then that's how we preserve liberty. So we need more people to be willing to step out. That putting myself out there, it's a personal thing where I'm exposed and all this stuff, and I highly value my privacy and stuff like that. But it's worth it for the future, because it's just apathy is going to be the death of us. But I think a vote for me is a vote for you, because it reminds everybody that you are the one with the power. The voters of Nevada have the power.
Well, that's an excellent point, because the parties rely on loyalty and an expectation that if you fall into their umbrella, that your vote belongs to them.
Right.
And your vote belongs to you. You'll hear it from both parties. They'll say, well, if you vote for this, you're throwing your vote away. Well, that's fine. It's my vote. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be sacred. It's supposed to be mine to make the choice with. It doesn't belong to the parties. It doesn't belong to those people that run those shows that think that they get to tell us how to do things. We are supposed to be telling them.
Right.
So my vote is my vote, and I'll give it to who I want to. And that should be the attitude of everybody.
To go statewide, it was important for me that every Nevadan have an opportunity to make a nonpartisan choice.
Yeah.
Because why limit it to a certain district? Every Nevadan deserves to be represented, period. And with a mandate of the people.
There's a chance to get out there and do something. Vote.
It gives the people the voice. I think that's really important, and I hope I can communicate to that. You're not voting for Trey. You're not voting for a weird party. You're voting for everyone's voice counts. And even without a super majority or whatever, you have state your claim. So I really appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate your candor, and I really appreciate the time you spent today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Cool beans.